Using fast travel has become a staple in modern games, and it's hard to imagine open world titles without the possibility of using fast travel. But in recent weeks I've thought more about how some games just make you not want to use fast travel, and after giving it some thought, in this video I'll present to you what I think are those points that make fast travel unattractive to the player. So first off, we got to talk about the easy way. And what do I mean by the easy way exactly? Well, it's simple. There are some games where the movement is just so quick and enjoyable that you just don't care about fast travel. A perfect example of that is Spider-Man. In the Spider-Man games, I didn't use fast travel at all, okay? It is probably the only game that I've played that came out in recent years where I literally didn't use it once, and simply because the movement is so fun. In Hogwarts Legacy it was similar. I didn't use fast travel as often as I did because flying on your broomstick was also a lot of fun, and it was also very quick to get from point A to point B. So there are some games and some gameplay mechanics that just don't make you want to use fast travel. And before I got into the more detailed points, I obviously got to mention that. But I mean, those games are very limited because obviously not every game can have a movement method like in Spider-Man, but still some games just make it really easy to not even think about fast travel at all. Okay, and so if a game doesn't have the easy way that I just talked about, one aspect that a lot of games have in common where I don't want to use fast travel as often is that they're not gigantic worlds. And here the importance of scale in this discussion really comes out. And a perfect example that I have here is Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It is probably the game where I used fast travel the most. Like after 10 or 15 hours, I pretty much only used fast travel. Obviously the open world of the game is extremely huge, and getting from point A to B is, because they are sometimes literally miles away from each other, really takes a lot of time. And if I compare my fast travel use in Assassin's Creed Valhalla to Assassin's Creed 2, it's not even a comparison. Like, you literally can't compare the scales of the cities when it comes to Assassin's Creed 2 to Valhalla's. And I think that's also a big aspect why I personally didn't use fast travel in Assassin's Creed 2 almost at all. And getting from point A to B in Venice was a way different story than in Valhalla. I mean, even getting from the top of the map to the bottom is like 5 minutes, and the movement and the parkour of the game is way more dynamic and way more enjoyable in my opinion as well, because it is laid out more for assassins. And probably the best example that I have here is The Witcher 1. And while I love the game to bits, a big negative aspect that I had and that I talked about in my reviews of The Witcher 1 is that a lot of the game is just go to point A, pick something up, get back to there, and you just have to keep running around from point A to point B a dozen times. And obviously there isn't a way to fast travel, and there also isn't a way to travel fast, if you know what I mean. You know, you can't get on a horse like in The Witcher 3 for example, and sometimes you had to get from the swamp, in Act 3 especially, from the swamp to the rich part of Vizima. And I mean, doing that one time or 2 times maximum is alright, you know, it didn't piss me off that much. But after doing that 5 times and running around for 10-15 minutes and seeing the same stuff was really getting under my skin. And while The Witcher 1 definitely has a lot of great aspects, the way to travel in the game was definitely not one of them, especially because Geralt was running so slow. And obviously you couldn't use your sword in Vizima, so it was a proper pain in the ass to travel from point A to B. And I also noticed that problem only when traveling those huge distances. I mean, in the first chapter, the region also is big, but even if you want to traverse the whole map of the outskirts of Vizima, it doesn't take more than 5 minutes. And that's why the scale also is a big part when it comes to the usage of fast travel. And one aspect that I thought about a lot in recent days was the immersion, and if fast travel actually breaks the immersion that we can feel in the game, because obviously it instantly transports us from one location to another without experiencing the proper journey in between. And my example here is the Elder Scrolls. If you think about the difference in fast travel when it comes to the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind and Oblivion, the difference is quite huge. Because in the Elder Scrolls 3, you actually have to invest with something, whether it is a spell or whether it is coin, in order to be able to fast travel. And thus we actually think about it twice, whether we actually want to use fast travel, or maybe we're gonna walk 5 minutes and see some sights in order to not pay the price of fast travel. But now I'm playing Oblivion at the moment, and it is a completely different story. In Oblivion, you do not pay a price at all, and you can literally travel to every single city without you actually having to visit them. And I didn't realize that until midway through the game, because I didn't feel like I needed to. You know, riding a horse was a very fast way to travel, and it was not really a problem, because everything that I was seeing was kind of new to me. And after I realized I was actually able to use fast travel, probably like 20 or 30 hours into the game, I started using it more and more, and also maybe subconsciously. And I think a big aspect why that is because I have already explored those locations, and that is probably one of the best solutions that a game can have. I will talk about that solution in the later part of the video. And here I really have to say that I didn't know that you could use fast travel in the game like that until the midpoint of Oblivion, because I could really immerse myself and get to know the world like a proper explorer. You know, probably if I would have known that we could use fast travel, I would have used it also in the beginning of the game without actually traveling and experiencing the journey of riding there in the first place. But in order for all of those points that I just listed to make sense, one, probably the most important aspect that I also talk a lot about on this channel is quality over quantity when it comes to fast travel. You know, it just has to feel valuable to go somewhere and to not use fast travel, because when we look at Valhalla, traveling from one point in an area in England to another, which has a distance of like 2 miles and would take you 10 minutes to get there, you don't really see an advantage of not using fast travel. But then you have games like Zelda, for example, which literally wants you to not use fast travel. It literally wants you to explore the world and travel the world. And how does it do that? Well, you can actually miss a lot of incredible and beautiful landscapes and carefully crafted lore if you use fast travel all the time. So if using slow travel, that's what I'm going to call it now, feels valuable to the player, and you actually get something out of it, whether it is an interesting location or some interesting NPCs, if there's nothing there, like for example in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, you really think twice about actually traveling to the destination. And so now if we put all of this together, I wanted to talk about the solutions that will actually decrease the usage of fast travel by gamers. And the first obvious solution is, well, what I talked about in the easy way. You just pick a movement that is fun and enjoyable, and that also makes it easy and quick to get from point A to B. Obviously, the games like Spider-Man or Hogwarts Legacy are perfect examples for that, but not every game can include a Spider-Man or a broomstick in it. So probably one of the best solutions that I think is you do not want to ban fast travel. That obviously is not an option at all, but you also don't want to do it like Oblivion, in my opinion, where you literally can fast travel through the whole map without even exploring a single bit of it. The best way, in my opinion, for developers to use fast travel is what also a lot of games do already, and it is where the player actually has to visit and explore the location in order to be able to fast travel there afterwards. I mean, that would have been groundbreaking in a game like The Witcher 1. Hopefully they will address this in the remake. Well, I'm certain that they will do it. And I also would have loved that in Oblivion, so that we actually get to know the lore, the locations and the people, and we also take those journeys in the beginning in order to immerse ourselves into the game. And obviously after 30-40 hours in the world, you sometimes just want to use fast travel because it's not so exciting to see the same road the 10th time in one playthrough. So I think that's a great solution that developers can make. And so I think what that will also do is it will split gamers. You know, you will have those that will still want to travel by foot or by horse. I'm actually one of those, especially if I have not spent 60 or 70 hours in the game. But in order for that to happen, in order to have those people that actually want to travel by foot, you have to make it feel valuable to not use fast travel, as I talked in the 4th chapter. So instead of making the open worlds bigger and bigger and putting nothing in it, you actually think about interesting locations or interesting NPCs that you put there, or some rewards that you find in the dungeon, for example. That's also a big point in the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, where I was literally riding from point A to B, and then suddenly I saw a tower. I went in there and it led me to a huge dungeon that in the end rewarded me with a chest that had a weapon way better than the one that I was using. But I'll talk about the Elder Scrolls 4 in my review that will come out in the upcoming weeks. And those are just some aspects that I was use as a developer in order to make slow travel more enjoyable. Alright, so obviously everything that I talked about in the video is very heavily decided by personal preference. If you're someone that just doesn't have a lot of time to play video games, obviously it's a completely different discussion, because I obviously totally understand that if you have 3 or 5 hours per week to play video games, you do not want to spend those just traveling from point A to B and seeing the same roads all over again. But for most gamers, it's heavily decided on the game and how the developers treat the open world. And while I think that it is good that fast travel is optional, I hope that we'll get more of those games that actually emphasize us not using fast travel as often. That's also a big point that I noticed in Assassin's Creed Mirage, where I used fast travel literally way less than Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Obviously, it's a way shorter game as well, but a lot of the points that I talked about in the video were perfectly included in Mirage. Firstly, the movement was way better and more fluid than in Valhalla, for example. The size of the open world was obviously a completely different dimension, and thus they could also focus, Ubisoft that is, could also focus more on the quality of the open world and put some interesting sites or locations or NPCs in some spots, which actually makes you want to use slow travel more. And I want to hear about your opinion. What is your stance when it comes to using fast travel? Are you one of those gamers that literally uses fast travel every time you can? Or are you more like me, that is also a big advocate of slow travel? As I said, the personal preference is a big aspect here, but the points that I listed in this video are, in my opinion, the most important when it comes to how many people use fast travel and how often. Alright guys, that was it from me in today's video. I wish you all an amazing day. I see you in the next one. Bye bye.